Good morning to all of you, and I really want to thank the Chicago Council for really bringing together all of these talented minds to discuss the essential role of water security as it relates to agriculture, nutrition, and resilience. And this is the day before World Water Day, so the timing is very well fitting. As Femi mentioned, I'm Beth Dunford. I lead Feed the Future for the US government. And why is the food person up here talking about water? Well, that's a good question. But we all know, and you've been hearing, you can't talk about food without talking about water. You can't talk about water without talking about food. Water is critical to all of our basic needs. It's the lifeblood of communities that we work with and across really all of our development goals. Water is critical to preventing disease. It's critical to improving productivity. It's also critical to feeding a growing population. But we know that water is stressed. With all these demands I just talked about on the rise, we know that supply is dwindling. This is resulting in political instability, increasing fragility, increasing conflict. We know that by 2050, the economic growth of countries experiencing water stress can decrease by up to 15%. And even in those countries with a lot of water, if they do not treat water as a finite resource, do not ensure access to water and sanitation for their population, we know that the consequences are devastating. So when we talk about water scarcity and access, we have to talk about it in relationship to food production and the nutritional needs of the communities in which we work. These water-related risks are an issue for us no matter what sector we're in. Is it nutrition, agriculture, resilience, or water? So against this backdrop, which is dire, I am optimistic that we can rise to meet these challenges. And we at Feed the Future, we're hopeful. And I want to give you an example of why. And it comes from the Old and Narrow market. So for decades, there was no investment in northern Kenya, where the Old and Narrow market is. We had limited development resources, and we thought, well, we can't really make an impact up there, so we'll take our development resources elsewhere. The government didn't invest, others didn't either. So every couple of years when there was a drought, we'd run in with humanitarian assistance. In 2011, that changed. The drought was so severe, loss of life, huge economic losses. We came together and said, oh, we have to do something different. This was led by the government of Kenya. Their Ending Drought Emergencies initiative. We came in with other donors, other actors to support this initiative. But importantly, the government of Kenya put in more resources than all of the donors combined. We brought in investments across sectors, and the Old and Narrow market, which I think is just emblematic of the success of what happened in northern Kenya, went from a dilapidated market where 200 to 300 animals came through every other week, and when there was the first whiff of a drought, the whole thing collapsed. Fast forward to 2017, the next drought, where we saw the Old and Narrow market, it didn't just survive the drought, it thrived. And we saw that 500,000 fewer people needed humanitarian assistance that year. So what made the difference in Old and Narrow? First of all, we started treating people and places of recurrent humanitarian crisis as a development priority. Secondly, we started with agriculture, but we didn't end there. We invested in nutrition. We invested in water, education, health, and beyond, democracy and governance. The government invested in road infrastructure. So we worked with farmers, we worked with herders to increase their production. We spent a lot of time helping increasing access to finance, really working with these small and medium enterprises so they could build and they could flourish. We helped vet services, private sector vet services pop up. We worked with the cell company to get a cell tower up in the Old and Narrow market. Now you see traders up from Nairobi on their cell phones doing deals, moving animals in and out. So as all these businesses began to flourish, other businesses began to pop up. Ladies making lunch, and now there's a photo booth. You can go in with your family and sit down and get your picture taken against a tropical backdrop. So again, this builds upon itself to a successful, thriving commercial center. We invested in rehabilitating the health clinic, so when people come in from far and wide, they can access that service. But underpinning all of these investments is water. Water, water, water. It's critical to making it all work. You can't have a clinic without water. Importantly, water at the market ensured that people coming in from far and wide, especially women, had a safe bathroom to use, a safe place to clean themselves. Importantly, there was a way to water animals. You can't have this many animals coming through a market without clean water, and also water to fuel the trade and the commerce. We focus on innovations, partnering with US universities and local actors, developed solar sensors, satellite monitors. This helped us monitor rainfall, yield, and helped really people in the area monitor critical boreholes, and some of this technology is also being used now back in California. So that brings me to my third point. There was a mix of partners that came together to make this all work across sectors. Universities, NGOs, international organizations, donors, people across the humanitarian and development spectrum and within many sectors. But importantly, this was government-led. I already talked about the Ending Drought Emergencies initiative that came out of the government of Kenya, the central government. But importantly, this initiative was county-owned. The county owned these projects, saw it as their responsibility to move this forward. And the private sector that made it all work. We looked for catalytic investments where we could unlock the private sector to make the market flourish, to make the entire food system work in the area. And that's increasingly our role as donors, as we know, is to partner, is to leverage, to influence, and to really find those catalytic investments that make the agri-food system work. So we're really happy that the Chicago Council is thinking about how water and food security are important with each other. We're talking about water not just in water security, but also water access, sanitation, and hygiene. And I wanted to highlight some things we're doing at USAID. We're making institutional changes to ensure better collaboration across these sectors. In the proposed Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, we will be elevating water. We will be standing up a center for sanitation, hygiene, a center for water security, sanitation, and hygiene. This center will be responsible for implementing the Water for the World Act of 2014 and advancing the US Global Water Strategy. Importantly, also in the proposed Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, we will have responsibility for advancing the Global Food Security Act and the Multi-Sectoral Nutritional Strategy. So by elevating water alongside nutrition, agriculture, and resilience, we know we will see better results on the ground. So over the past decades, we've been able to see tremendous development progress. Not always equitable, but definitely tremendous progress. We know that this progress is increasingly under threat with increasing shocks and stresses that are more frequent, more severe, more complex. And the road ahead is difficult. So as we work to accelerate progress, we also have to work to protect that progress by an increased focus on risk. And water is an important component of that. And finally, going forward, we will be measuring our success not only on the development outcomes we achieve. We'll continue to do that. We want to make sure our programs are evidence-based. But we will be also measuring our programs on the capacity and commitment of countries to advance their own progress in water and food security on their own journey to self-reliance. Thank you.